Hello, 7th graders. Welcome to lessons 14 and 15. We're doing two lessons today, two different pages of the book, because they're sort of joined together. If I didn't tell you this were two lessons, you wouldn't even notice the difference. So today we're talking about the number line. You don't probably have a number line at home, but you can make one if you need one, or if you just sort of imagine that. The number line is separated into three parts. So if we were here in person, I would ask if we had any volunteers to name me any of the parts of the number line, and some people would come up with these answers. If you want to pause the video for a second and think about that, that's probably more beneficial for you to think a little bit instead of just listening to me. You know, what are the three parts of the number line? Three parts of the number line are positive numbers. POSI is the middle vowel for that. Negative. NEGA is the middle vowel for that. And then there's a third choice that isn't positive or negative. The third option that's neither positive nor negative is zero. Zero is in a club, sort of all of its own. Positive numbers are all the ones greater than zero. Negative numbers are all the ones less than zero, and zero is the cutoff point. The next question I'd ask you if you were here would be if you know any types of numbers. And people would start yelling out fractions and different things like that I wouldn't necessarily be looking for, but there's three different groups of numbers that are marked on the number line other than positive, negative, and zero that have names. And so if you want to try to think about that, scan your memory, you can pause the video a minute while you're thinking about those. One of the groups of numbers on the number line is a thing called whole numbers. W-H-O-L-E, whole numbers. What the whole numbers are all of the numbers from 0 and up that are marked on my number line. So 0 is the lowest whole number, 1, 2, 3, and we don't have the patience to list this because it would go on literally forever. So we can throw a little dot, dot, dot on this list that means that list will just go on forever. There's one group of numbers that's a little bit bigger than the whole numbers. There's one group of numbers that's a little bit lower, a little bit fewer than the whole numbers. You can scan your memory banks again, pause the video if you want to try to engage your brain and retrieve any of that information. The slightly smaller list can either be called natural numbers or they can be called counting numbers. The counting numbers start with 1 and then go up from there forever. So it's almost the same club here. It's just the whole numbers include 0 as well as the countings. And then there's a bigger group than that. So again, if you want to try to scan your memory banks, this is the one people usually have the most trouble brainstorming when we are in person doing this lesson. This category starts with an I. They're called integers, I-N-T-E-G-E-R-S. The integers still include all those same numbers, 0 and up forever, but also includes their negative friends. So -1 is an integer, -2 is an integer, -3 is an integer, and you can count down literally forever. We're not going to do a quiz on this in quarantine, but if we were in person, we'd be taking quizzes on this where I'd say, what are the three groups on the number line? You'd say positive, negative, 0. I might ask you, name me the types of numbers and describe what they're about. You know, the integers are negatives and positives and 0, go forever both ways. The wholes are 0 and up, natural or counting, 1, 2, 3 and up. Maybe when we're back in person, we'll worry about doing that. So you might want to jot this down somewhere, hang on to this little bit of notes, because there are quizzes that exist, but we're not going to try to do those while I'm here and you're at home. One thing that the homework's going to do with these number line questions is they're going to ask you to just find some locations. I'll grab my pointer over here. So if they ask you to find a number that's 7 to the left of 10, you'd start with 10 as your home base, and then move 7 spots to the left from the word after of. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You land on positive 3. Some of you quickly realize when it's moving you left, that's the same as a subtraction problem. You could take 10 and subtract 7 and get 3. If they wanted you to go 7 to the right instead of subtracting, you'd add opposites. If I switch the sentence up and go 10 left of 7, you'd instead of starting at 10, you'd have to start at 7. And if you try to move 10 to the left, you'd land on -3. Same result, just negative, because the 10 outweighed the 7 that time. Second bit of thing they'll do with the number line is have you find some numbers that are halfway between other numbers. So if we want to find who's halfway between, let's say, 8 and 10, you could start with 8 and 10 and just count in equally from both fingers here, and we'd land on the 9. If they ask you to find something between 8 and 9, that's not going to be able to be a whole number. If we go halfway between 8 and 9, that's going to be 8.5. Between 3 and 6, maybe that's a whole number, maybe that's a half number. There's a pattern to when you get the wholes and when you get the halves. So think about, be on the lookout for a pattern here to this. Halfway between 3 and 6 is not going to be a whole number. It's going to be a half kind of number. If we go halfway between 3 and 6, one way to do this is start on 3 and 6, count in one step, and then try to meet in the middle. And when you meet in the middle there, you'd be meeting at 4.5. Between 7 and 11, we're trying to find halfway between. There's a pattern to when they're wholes and when they're halves again. This is going to be a whole number. The whole number would be a 9 here, because if we go 7 and 11, count in, you'd land on 9. Another way you could do this, halfway between is a 2-word phrase that's a synonym for finding the average. Averaging is something we haven't mentioned this year yet, but it's coming up soon. To average two numbers just amounts to adding the numbers up and then divide by how many numbers there are. So if you had to average 20 numbers, you'd add up 20 numbers and you divide by 20. We're averaging 2 numbers. So we can add these up and we can divide by 2. It's another way we could do this if we don't feel like counting in with our fingers. Because if I asked you halfway between 3 and 97, I don't think we'd want to go to 3 and 97 and count in a million spaces. It'd be a lot quicker to just add those up. 100, divide by 2, 50. That would be a whole number, kind of an answer. Here's the pattern to when you get wholes and when you get halves. If they're the same type of number, even and odd, you'll get a whole number. So 2 odds, landed on a whole number. 2 evens, landed on a whole number. 2 odds, landed on a whole number. 1 odd, 1 even together, got a halvesy thing. 1 odd, 1 even together, made a halvesy thing. So if we do 6 and 11, our halfway between on that is going to be something in the half family, since 1's even and 1's odd. 2 and 10, both even, we're going to land on a whole number. So with 6 and 11, you could either do some counting, start at 6 and 11, count in, and then meet in the middle at 8.5. Or you could add those up to 17. When you divide by 2, 2 into 17 goes to 8, and then it's a halvesy number because there's the remainder is involved in that. With 2 and 10, we're going to meet in the middle at 6. Either from 2 and 10, count in 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces, and meet at the 6. Or add those up to 12. Divide by 2, that's 6. One way you could check these two is just make sure it's the same space from both numbers to the answer. In other words, from 2 to 6, that's 4 spaces. From 10 to 6, also 4 spaces. So you're good. From 7 to 9, 2 spaces. From 9 to 11, 2 spaces. You're good. One more time, from 3 to say 4.5, that's a space and a half. From 4.5 up to 6 is also a space and a half. They're equally spaced. You're good. Still on the topic of negative numbers, there's going to be a bunch of subtracting questions, and starting today, half of your subtract answers are going to go negative, and half of your subtract answers are going to go positive for like the rest of your life. Anytime you get a minuend that's bigger, first number, bigger, you're going to get a positive result. So 6 minus 2 is a positive result because the minuend, the first number, is bigger. If the subtrahend, the second number, is bigger, 2 minus 6, we're going to go negative 4. They have the same number value, but positive if the bigger number's first, negative if the bigger number's second. And that's going to happen in half the problem. It's a 50-50 shot. We just saw that over here with these in the same way already. 7s and 10s involve 3s. But if we had to move a little bit, we got positive. If you had to move a lot, we got negative. So 1 less than 4, 4 less than 1, these both have something to do with 3s. It's just a question of which one's the positive 3 and which one's the negative 3 when I start messing with numbers. If we go 1 less than 4, that's the positive 3. If we want to look at the number line, that's exactly the same as if I said 1 left of 3. Start at 4, go left 1, go less 1, however you want to say it, that would be a 3. If we try to do 4 less than 1, you're going to go down to negative 3. I think in the homework tonight, the homework is heavily tilted toward negative answers because they are introducing this for the first time this year, although you've seen this before. But in the future, 50-50, negative, positive. But today, homework is heavily toward negative results. And then the last thing on this was we've been reading numbers. We were reading those long numbers a couple days ago. If you're going to read this number, don't read a number like this as -4. Read a number like this as negative 4. If we have answers and we're coming all around the room for homework and we're calling on people and your paper says this, don't say -8, say -8. That's technically the right way to say that. The word minus is reserved for problems where you're doing subtracting actively. If you have an answer already accomplished and it has that symbol on there, you read that as -8. That's it for today. If questions, send me a message. We'll set up a Zoom session if we need to for people that have questions about how to do anything or anything that's unclear. The homework that you're working on from these lessons on page 32, we're just going to do the letters A, B, C, D. The page 32 letters A, B, C, D are going to be a lot like this column of stuff that we were doing. Going to the left, going to the right, averaging things because you're halfway between on the number line. The 34, we're going to do more stuff on 34. 34, we're going to do A to J, which is a lot of subtracting problems, which are going to go heavily toward negative answers because they're going to set them up where the first number is smaller. And then we're going to do the normal old 1 to 25 there on page 34. They'll have a mix of all sorts of stuff. So, if that works for you, message me, send me an email if you need to have questions, and we'll set up a Zoom meeting soon.